Welcome, Reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am, as always, H.A. Conrad, here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Good day, H.A. How's it going?
Going well, going well. We got a lot of news to cover today before we get into our review, and our review is going to be of basically an homage to George Romero's Day of the Dead Bloodline. And we touched very lightly upon this just because it came out, and we've saved this one for review, so we'll get into that shortly. But to kick off the news, we actually have some Romero-related news to talk about. Did you want to kick it off, or did you want me to?
Oh, I'm happy to. This is a story about Tina Romero, George Romero's daughter, which I hadn't really looked into much of his personal life, and I didn't realize that he had kids, so it perfectly makes sense. And the fact that she's into filmmaking and the fact that she's into zombies, I find this all very heartwarming. So right off the bat, I'm in, right? I've got buy-in. And then the fact that she's going to be doing a twist on his version of The Walking Dead with slow shambling zombies and farce and political elements. I like it. I like a lot of it. What do you think?
I love it. I also didn't realize that she was working on basically a web series with Tom Savini, who everybody, I am sure, remembers from Romero films. He's the makeup and special effects supervisor, and so that's kind of cool. So I want to check that out, as well as the movie she's working on. Is it Queens of the Dead or Queen of the Dead?
Queens of the Dead.
Queens of the Dead. And then there's a little tidbit at the end that his son is also working on something. So go Romero clan, please bring us some good films. I am very excited to check it out. And very happy also to hear that Tom Savini is collaborating with them. So that's, I think that this is very good news. So really excited.
Yeah, hopefully they get together with Greg Nicotero also. And
that would be cool.
Yeah.
Be a full-on reunion. And then next up is basically an item we had talked about a little bit, and it was the musical Anna and the Apocalypse. And apparently it has now been picked up by Orion Pictures, and it looks like they will be releasing this in the holiday season of 2018. So we'll have to wait until this next year, apparently.
Yeah,
but
this is baloney, right? I mean,
yeah, it's like so weird because it's like, okay, everybody heard about this. I was waiting for it. I'm sure other people were too. And we saw the trailer, which seemed so much fun. And now we have to wait.
We've seen reviews.
Yeah, so now we have to wait until 2018. Kind of weird.
I mean, sure, it's a holiday film, but then do your buying more appropriately. Like, this is so dumb. Right. I feel like it's going to get pirated somehow now, and they're going to lose a lot of their potential sales.
Yeah, I think so too. And I honestly think that they should have stepped to it, and because it was getting all this press in October and November. I mean, yeah. I feel like you and I were talking about this I don't want to say exactly the summer months, but at least in the fall, and they could have gotten it together, and I think it would have been great and honestly welcomed for this past holiday season. So in any case, we'll stay tuned and stay posted on this one, but at some point we will review it, but it may not be until the end of this year. So,
yeah,
bummer.
That is a bummer. However, what is not a bummer is this article from Bloody Disgusting. Daphne and Velma, a spin-off film with zombies from the Mystery Machine and the gang from Scooby-Doo. So this is kind of like a cool girl power approach to a prequel for the Scooby-Doo stories. So I guess Matthew Lillard will not get to reprise his role as the dog, but instead we will have Sarah Jeffrey and Sarah Gilman, the Sarahs, and they'll be Daphne and Velma. What do you think about this?
I like this idea, and it does sound like there's going to be other things that happen with the rest of the Scooby gang, and this is going to be not it's live action, so it's going to be. A little bit, I think they're going to team up with the gang a little bit later, but they're saying it's going to clock in at 70 to 90 minutes, and so that's kind of cool. And I'm excited about it. These are two characters that usually are part of the background, but but Velma especially tends to be the mastermind behind solving everything. So I'm psyched to see her get a little bit of the spotlight. So
And there's a zombie element, which is nice.
yeah.
I mean, I feel like they've dabbled in that before. Hopefully, it will not be a mask ripped off of the janitor, and he'll say, "I would have gotten away with it too," but maybe he will, and maybe that'll be fine.
True. All right. So we'll look for that, and that's supposed to be out this year too. So this isn't. We won't have to wait too long for this.
Nicolas Cage is getting into the game. You see this?
No.
Yeah, Mom and Dad. Actually, you sent me this link, so.
Oh, you know what? I did read it. I didn't realize that Nick Cage was in it because I just looked through the review. But awesome.
But yeah, he's. This is gonna be kind of like a Signal type film. I don't know. We've never been able to review it because I think it's really hard to find right now. But the one where people go crazy after watching TV, and I think that's kind of one of the premises of this film is that suddenly parents are given this compulsion to kill their children. It's terrible. It's macabre, but it's Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair, and they're going to be trying to kill their children rather. And so
that's pretty cool. I didn't realize it was.
Excited about that.
I saw the little synopsis, but I didn't see Cage's name, and now I'm seeing this photo of him, which is phenomenal. So this looks pretty good. And one of the things that I thought was interesting about the summary that I read was just that this is caused by some kind of virus, but they're not mindless zombies in this. They are actually able to try to convince their children to come out of hiding and manipulative and stuff like that. So it's a little creepy. Yeah. And they are terming it a black comedy. So
Well, it's got Cage in it.
I know. And so it's not going to be probably to everybody's taste, but I'm kind of psyched to see this.
Yeah. And the fact that they can reason is also why I would compare this to The Signal or Signal. Right. I never remember if there's an article in that. But that, that in that one, it's kind of like a bunch of vignettes. And in one of them, there's a person who's very clearly infected, but is also still acting enough like a normal person that nobody knows how to handle the situation. So I'm looking forward to some awkward and over the top Nicolas Cage acting for sure.
He can be so much fun when in the right setting and with the right script. He can be a lot of fun. So, then next up, it gets a little real, folks. Just a friendly reminder to get your flu vaccine if you haven't already.
They're 10% effective this year, you guys. 10%.
They're saying 30, but I think it's probably less than that. Also, there's a difference whether you get the trivalent, which is what most people get, versus the quadrivalent. So.
Oh my goodness, that's some big words.
It is. So trivalent protects against 3 strains, quadrivalent 4, and you have to basically ask for the quadrivalent vaccine. But in any case, this is looking like the flu season is pretty bad this particular year, and this is what happens when the vaccine doesn't necessarily cover what kind of shifts. And we got a little bit of an inkling when the flu season hit Australia, because obviously they're ahead of us, or in terms of their winter, and then it goes into their summer. And so there was some inkling that this was going to happen, though I think the hope is that it wouldn't hit the U.S. as hard. But that has not been the case. At least here in New York City, it has been pretty bad. Everybody I know,
it's been bad out here too. It's been really bad on the West Coast also.
Everybody I know who has unfortunately been felled by this has ended up having to go into. It's just holding on a long time. A lot of people I know have had to go see the doctor and get and some more serious than that. So. Anyway, stay healthy, folks. I myself am going to seal myself into a bubble.
Good luck with that. Until March or April.
Yeah, it's making its way through my office right now, but everybody who has had it has been down and out for almost a month. It's been bad.
Yeah, I've got friends who got influenza A, which is, I think, probably the more bastardy of the strains this season, and they were basically homebound. And I sent her a text yesterday, and I have not heard back, so I'm starting to get a little concerned.
You may want to leave some Gatorade or something on their porch, or Tamiflu or something.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. If you do get this, I think the mistake people are making is thinking that they can get through it because it's pretty. So this isn't H1N1. This is the H1N3. That is causing all the issues. So,
There's too many names for this stuff because all I've seen, like when we got, our kids have been sick. And I don't know if you can tell by my voice, but this is like probably my fourth cold of this winter. But our kids have been sick and we took them in for testing, like nasal swabs or whatever. And they came back with, the test results came back with influenza A, influenza B, and then I forget what the other one was, RSV, which is respiratory syncytial virus or something. I don't know. It's not flu. Either way, it doesn't matter. And they came back negative for flu, which was great. But why would they be calling it influenza A and B and then H1N3? It's too many names.
Because there are different strains. So, like the flu vaccine protects against certain strains of the A virus. And and then there's like one strain of the B virus. The quadrivalent protects against two strains of the B virus. So what has shifted is how they did the vaccines, I guess. And the shift actually happened with how the vaccine was produced, which is why it's not giving the coverage. It is all very confusing. However, I should point out that with the film that we are reviewing today, that apparently the cause of the zombie outbreak in this remake is the H1N1 flu virus or some kind of mutation of that virus. So.
It would seem that there's a connection there. It's also germane to point out that it is the 100-year anniversary of the 1918 influenza epidemic that killed something like 50 million people around the world.
Right.
So that's good news.
It's great news, although that happened in the summer months. That's kind of what happened, is that it hit people. And the interesting thing, though, is that if you do get the flu vaccine, or if you've had a flu that has some similarities to whatever strain happens to be hitting everybody, apparently your resistance is there, but it can go away, which is why the Spanish flu hit in the summertime, because people's resistance was like low, apparently. So let's hope that doesn't repeat. History does not repeat itself on this level. And for those of you not feeling so well, please stay home. Use your sick days. Don't spread a pandemic. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, well, that's good advice. But something else I learned interesting about the Spanish flu was that the reason it got that name wasn't because it was like only in Spain or like started in Spain. There's a lot of theories as to where it started, even in Kansas in the U.S. or China. But it was basically because Spain owned it. Spain was like, we've got a really bad flu outbreak here, you guys. Everybody should be aware. And then Great Britain was like, we need to contain this information, because they were still in like World War I mode. They're like, this is like, potentially dangerous propaganda. Let's deny that we have the flu here and just say that it's in Spain only or something like that.
It was
and
something
then it became
crazy.
The Spanish flu. That was just some really
dark
evil,
stuff.
evil war propaganda stuff that Britain decided to be like, yeah, you know what? That's just the Spanish flu. Don't worry, you guys. We're gonna be fine. That is straight out of a zombie film.
True.
So way to go, UK. You still got it. 100 years ago.
Did you happen to see that whole thing where they have actually discovered that the Black Plague was likely not caused by rats or spread by rats as they had originally thought?
Well, I have not heard that.
Yeah, I will try to find the article and we can put it in the show notes. But basically, what they are saying is based upon the spread. There's just no possible way that it could have been spread by rats and fleas in the way that they were saying. Instead, they think that it was spread by humans. Not a big surprise. And through body lice as opposed to fleas, which is really interesting.
So many of my history classes were dedicated to like the introduction of brown rats. They like imported millions of brown rats into England to kill the black rats.
Yep, the Norwegian. Yeah, but apparently that was not the cause.
So they just brought a bunch of rats into England for no reason.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I find that funny, even though it's tragic.
It is very strange, and it's they got the blame game for all of that. Everybody it was and all I can think about is how many movies, and this includes like zombie movies or like Black Death and all that always starts out with seeing the rats on the boats making their way to the harbor, spreading disease, and that wasn't the case.
That much maligned rodent.
Yep. And then there was this other, again, this is like so dark and whatever that I'm even, that I'm even talking about this, but there is the whole, hang on, here it is. I will send this to you. Black death spread by humans, vindicating rats. Rats can get their justice now. I don't.
Sure
will we have to pay restitution to the rats for blackening their name?
Yeah, the great grandchildren of the Black Death rats will thank us.
And then the whole article about the Aztec die-off and kill-off was apparently caused by a deadly outbreak of salmonella.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are they basing that off of like mummies and stuff?
Yes, off of DNA in teeth that they discovered, and basically they did not have the resistance to this, and apparently it's a strain that now doesn't really bother us all that much, but the Aztecs did not have any kind of way to battle it, so that is what is going on. So lots of news in die-offs and plague headlines.
Well, we have one other, the Saiga antelope die-off. You found some new news on that, so why don't you share that one?
Right. So basically, some of our diehard fans may remember that we talked about the mass death of about 200,000 Saiga antelopes in Kazakhstan that happened in 2015, and this is something that they've basically figured out that it was, and this is the article I put in here is from 2016, but there was something more recently that came out, and it was basically a perfect storm of this pathogen that was caused by weather conditions. So basically they were all breathing it in because of like these human conditions, and it caused hemorrhagic septicemia, which is why the mass die-off happened. And there's no necessary way to necessarily prevent this, so they are looking into that. Just a kind of a fascinating thing, since they didn't actually know exactly the mechanism, but it was basically this kind of cloud of pathogen that they all breathed in and at the same time.
That's bananas, and still terrifying. Doesn't like make it less scary. The fact that 200,000 animals can die within days of each other just because of breathing.
Yeah.
Don't like that. Also, don't like a domestic story here in the United States, in Colorado. Well, actually, it's not like a new thing, but there's this disease called chronic wasting disease, CWD, and it affects elk, deer, and moose. And it's not dissimilar to bovine spongiform encephalopathy, or mad cow disease, which I can never give blood. Thank you, living in England, for that little treat. But we have a sort of a deal with that going on here in the States, but people are still eating venison because they feel like there is no species jumping. However, a new study shows that CWD can jump from deer to macaque monkeys based on some new science, and so we might be having a bit of an issue with these hunters eating game meats. Like these are not kind of animals that, I mean, maybe a lot of people eat them. I very rarely eat venison or elk or moose. I don't think I've ever eaten moose. So maybe it's not going to be a huge widespread problem like beef was for the UK. But it's the wasting disease. It takes 2 years to show symptoms, so it's got a crazy long incubation period, and then they just start losing weight and get like a glassy look in their eyes and become like unfocused. And the article from Colorado Public Radio that I'll be sharing also says that a lot of times it was they just get hit by a car because they're walking on autopilot, or killed by a predator before they would get to a hunter. But they'll also make easier targets for hunters. So that's kind of the breakdown there. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one, HA. I think this might be a problem. I mean, not if it does jump, it doesn't sound like it would be like a scary zombie virus, but it could be, just like mad cow disease where it starts to rot your brain away.
Yeah, I mean, Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease is really terrifying. So I think I read it. I did not hear the is it like a basically the newscast that you heard, but I did read an article about this. And what was this, the one interviewing the hunter who was basically like, yeah, we eat venison, whatever, but we know like the deer don't look sick or something like that.
Right.
Is that the one? And the problem is that because it takes so long for it to incubate and for it to show symptoms, like you can't necessarily tell by looking at the game whether they are infected or not. And that's very similar to the mad cow disease, is that it doesn't necessarily have signs indicating all the time that they are ill. There is a way to test for them, though, and most, if you are a smart game hunter, you should be taking the game that you're shooting and getting it tested. The problem is apparently, though, that a lot of game hunters don't do this, and so there is the chance that this could be a problem, at least with those people that do hunting and things like that. I personally have not had venison, I think, since I was a kid, because I'm not a huge fan of the game meats. It tastes gamey to me. There's like a taste to it that I'm just not a fan of. But I do think that if you have the mechanism to test these things, do so, and just don't put yourself and your family in danger. Wow, there's a lot of like kind of scary news out there today.
That's welcome to 2018. Some more. But we've had a lot of light news weeks, so this one was a bit heavier.
But you know, I say we go escape into the unreality of our review that for the Romero homage, if you can call it that.
I don't want you to call it that anymore. I think that's an insult to homages.
Well, the reason why I keep saying it is because it really kind of isn't, or at least if that's what it was intended to be, it is not anything close. Though there are some things that they've tried to do, I think, to have people draw those conclusions. Some very like just flat out ripoffs, but do you want to get into it, or do you have anything else that we should cover?
No, let's talk about it.
Cool. All right. So what we were talking about is the Day of the Dead Bloodline, and this just came out on January 5th, basically. Is that correct?
Wow. Off to a great start, 2018.
Yeah, I know. So this just came out the very new year. This was directed by a person. I think he's only done one other film, maybe, or one other feature film, and his name is
Hector Hernandez, and I don't know his last name. Vicens,
yeah, like something like that. I think Vicens, and he, doesn't have a ton on his resume. There's something about a woman in a like morgue or something like that, or the grave of Anna Fitz or something. I think this was definitely defined as a remake of Day of the Dead, and this was announced long ago in 2013. And those people who did the producers who were doing Texas Chainsaw 3D were the people who obtained the rights. So that should have given us an inkling about where this was going to go. And there were some hopeful things about this. One was that they definitely were talking about the fact that this wasn't going to be sort of swarm fast zombie movie. They said at the time that they were going to go with the shambling, more real world zombies. So we'll get to that in a second. And the other clue that probably was going to give us some pause is the fact that it was supposed to be released last year, but then they had to push it to 2018. And usually when they're having to do things like that, that does not bode well. Every once in a while they're editing it in a positive way, but I feel like we have seen this a few times where they have delayed the release, which, by the way, does not bode well for Patient Zero that we keep hearing about. But usually there's a lot of problems when they delay as much as this film has been delayed. It features Sophie Skelton as Zoe Parker, Jonathan Skaich as Max.
His claim to fame, by the way, he was once married to Christina Applegate.
Yep. And Sophie Skelton was in Outlander. And she's like, I think she's one of the characters, like she plays the time traveler's daughter or something in that. So I have not really seen her that much, and I think she's been in a couple of other like British productions. But Outlander's pretty big, though I think she's only been in 4 episodes of that. It looks like. So we got her, and then yeah, Jonathan Sketch is like kind of a creepy dude.
Very creepy. Yes.
In this particular.
He's creepy.
And he's been in like a ton of stuff, but I honestly couldn't really, like, I did not remember him. I just thought he seemed like a very super freaky John Hamm or something. Like the way they had his hair and everything, like that, it was a little bit John Hamm going on.
And he had pretty good makeup too.
No, his makeup was great, and that was that's the thing that I'm talking about. What that was basically. They full on yanked a lot of the makeup ideas from the original.
Yeah.
So, and I think that was obviously the intention. Do you want to get into the plot? The recap. Of this?
Yeah.
Yep.
So this movie begins with some blurry zombie eating on the streets scenes. It's timeline wise, they go like. There's a little bit at the very beginning, and then they jump back in time a little while, and then they jump forward in time several years. Mm-hmm. So the very first scenes that we see are on the street. It's very clearly a set, not a real street. It's like one of these streets that's you've seen this street in like music videos, and all kinds. I wish they could just. I'm sure it's really hard to get real streets, but gosh, these sets are not good for anything anymore. At least it isn't ironic.
Well, the last time they may have used them was probably on the original Day of the Dead. So
that was actually shot in real streets in Florida.
I know. I'm teasing. Yeah. But it does have that very much that weird, cheesy, faux feeling. Like you don't get the sense these are actually city streets. And the thing with this is like supposed to be your typical. Zombie apocalypse mayhem breaking out, and the makeup on these walkers it's pretty good, but then the blood effects and stuff, they definitely are they're playing very much into the super cheesy old school horror film, like with like for no apparent reason. Suddenly blood is spurting out in like explosive ways. Like there was one particular scene where somebody gets dragged into like this subway, down these subway steps, and it's like absolute like a geyser of blood coming up that like would probably take several humans to cause, as opposed to the one.
If it had been a geyser, I would be more in favor of that approach. But it was more like. It looked like a confetti gun or something. Yeah. It did not look like blood at all. It just looked like a bunch of solid objects getting shot in a cone vertically. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
And we see this particular effect in several parts of this scene, particularly in the car scene. So this guy's getting into the car with his wife and basically gets taken out by a zombie jumping in through the window, and then suddenly
shatters the window. Right?
It shatters the window, but also the outpouring of his blood just suddenly like fills like the entire car. Like it's just very strange. So there's that, and also the unlikely events unfolding is that our intrepid hero is walking down this street totally like nobody's assaulting her, even though everybody else. She's on the phone, like distracted, like sort of like a normal pedestrian, while people are getting like yanked off their bikes and because the person, it's just so strange, like the whole setup of this. And I think it's deliberately supposed to be ridiculous, but it's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Yeah, she's just like looking from side to side, like, wow, Mom, there's some bad stuff going on out here in the streets. Stay at home, be careful. Oh, Mom.
Yeah.
And then, then it's like. Previously, did you see how far backwards in time we went? Was it just like earlier that day?
I think it was earlier that day because she's wearing that outfit and her shirt's kind of messed up. So I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be earlier that day. And that this is the kind of beginning and the aftermath of that. I'm not quite sure why they chose to do this with the timeline like they did. I don't think it makes all that much sense. The editing of this, like, that doesn't totally make sense to me. But
Yeah, because even in this flashback, it's like we don't have to wait 5 minutes for the action to start. It's like
right. It's not like it's like a lead up, right?
It's like you need a lot of time to do exposition and background and develop some characters. But what's funny about this flashback is every character gets killed. I mean, we meet Max. Max is really the only reason why we need this.
Yeah.
But it's a very strange reason for having this back and forth stuff. So yeah, at the medical school, they did not have their A team of actors. It's like the girl who plays Zoe, and then a bunch of people who read their lines like they're me. But
Zoe kind of does that too. So
a little bit, yeah. But she's not quite as wooden as her best friend Abby or the Dr. Beamer or whatever her name was. These guys and the Abby's boyfriend, who's clearly an Englishman trying to speak with an American accent and not doing a great job of it.
That was tough.
It's like, oh, I love beer.
I know.
I don't know. It was just, I was like, dude, why don't you just be yourself?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. The other thing that I was laughing a lot at during these particular scenes was the party scene. We're talking like the most ridiculous things, like in terms of it's just sort of okay. Let's put a party in like the morgue and the lab, and how do we show that? We'll put people in lab coats awkwardly dancing and like tapping multiple kegs. Like I don't know that these people are going to be drinking that much, and there's only like 20 people in there, but.
They have 3 kegs.
They have like 3 kegs and they're like acting, and supposedly the party has just started, but they're all like clinking drinks as if like, and it's also like drinks don't even look realistic. They look like food coloring drinks and they're like, yeah, let's get it on. It's like so weird. But yeah, so that's kind of the party scene.
Also, when's the last time you hoisted a quarter keg?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're about 70, 80 pounds.
They're heavy.
I'm not saying that you couldn't do it, but Zoe is like super skinny. I mean, she's, Hollywood skinny. I don't know that she could just throw a keg around the way she's doing it in that scene either.
No. I agree with that assessment.
But we get to meet Max and then his like blood drawing scene, which is also setting up a lot of this plot for later because Dr. Beeler, was it maybe, says he's got 7,000 times the midichlorian count or whatever,
pretty much.
This kind of storyline.
Yet, because even though he's a special patient, he is super creepy. So he keeps basically stalking her. He carves her name into his arm. Keeps saying creepy things like that she's his, and yet she feels like she's compelled to kind of deal with him just because he's got like this thing going on that they basically need for research. So he does a good job at being a complete and total creeper.
Oh yeah.
That's no doubt there. Good acting. But it's kind of weird how not how she tolerates it, but basically her friend's like, oh, you shouldn't deal with that. And it's like, well, what is she supposed to do, right?
She says, be stronger next time.
Yeah, like what? Yeah. She's like, no, I'm not interested in you. Like, what is she supposed to do? It's kind of like, all right, I don't know.
Yeah, and she already complained to Dr. Beeler, like, I don't want to deal with this guy. He's creepy. And she's like, do it for your career.
Right. I know, that's
great advice. In 2018, this is great advice.
Yep. She's like, and she said something like, I'm really excited for you. It's like, what? Totally creepy.
Not cool.
Not cool at all.
But her career, when we boil it all down, comes down to looking in microscopes at cartoon blood cells interacting with each other, which is probably the most CG that this film had. Although there is a CG rat in another scene.
There is. But probably a blameless rat from what we know now about the Black Plague.
That's right. Totally innocent rat.
Yep.
So, then we proceed to the frat party. And we've also had an autopsy scene where we did a little bit of determined cause of death on a dead guy. Mm-hmm. And our hero figures it out. Influenza.
H1N1.
H1N1. And then he seems totally dead. I was like, okay, great. That guy's dead of the flu.
He is, but it's kind of like they keep showing her doing like jump scares because like his arm falls off the thing. At this point, she's a medical student. She's probably seen a ton of bodies. I thought that was a little weird, that she's still nervous around dead bodies.
Yeah.
But hey, I guess they want to. I like it's sort of like this. Like, keep in mind, as we've been saying, this moves around along pretty quickly. So I thought it was just trying to show like foreshadowing, and I'm like, yeah, but the foreshadowing is not successful since everything all happens about 2 minutes later. So okay, but maybe it's to she has a couple of scares in the morgue because the jerk fake British boyfriend of her friend is trying to scare her and stuff.
Right, that guy, he's a real winner. And then he's one of the first ones to go. Obviously, Dr. Beeler bought it off screen and is now a zombie. When we are reunited with her, her friend Abby doesn't make it out the window because Zoe's actually pretty spry and gets up there to that window quickly. Mm-hmm. Abby does not. So basically, everybody that we've met in this flashback is now dead or a zombie.
Yep.
Except for Zoe, who gets out the window and then flashes forward 5 years.
Yep. And then this is very similar to the original Day of the Dead in that there is basically a military compound that has all the survivors. It's being run by some members of the military, like they're all in the fatigues and things like that. It's got, they're showing like people are living in some tents and some sort of, it's a very like cold concrete kind of bunker situation, very similar to the first film.
Yeah. So this is the clearest homage, if you want to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But what we've also already established is that these are fast zombies. So I don't know if you remember what I said at the end of our last podcast, HA, but I was like, so this is an homage to Romero and he just died. So I'm sure they're going to want to be really close to his vision.
Nope.
And that's
Nope.
slow shambling zombies and that's politics or, class struggle. And we get nothing.
Yeah, we get none of that at all. And, there's sort of like a very loose tension, which seems like a strange tension because basically Zoe is still, she's acting as like a medical doctor, and she's doing research on the virus, which you would think everybody would be on board with and helping, but apparently the military guy, Miguel, is not into it for some reason.
Yeah. And they've gotten rid of the Dr. Frankenstein character. She essentially is the Dr. Frankenstein character, except instead of vilifying medicine or the mad scientist, which is kind of what the first film did, she's just like this, innocent med student who wants to find a vaccine, and she has none of the evil undertones or overtones, really, that the Dr. Frankenstein character has in the Romero's version.
Well, and right, and because Max is so creepy and basically attempted to rape her, which we probably should have mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, that was like a big deal, a big part of her character development. But there's none of the sympathy for Max at all. Like the character of Bub in the original film, that was like the whole point, was that the medical people, the main people, the doctor, were basically torturing Bub, and in this case, there is none of that at all. Like, so it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, I think that the only tension is that she needs Max to basically find a cure, and it's kind of disgusting and repellent to her since he tried to rape her. So she's constantly having to like basically rescue him and stop him from having a headshot so that she can find a cure for everybody. But there's like the whole crazy thing, So since she's a doctor there, like one of the little kids has like the flu or pneumonia or something, and they're supposed to go and get supplies. And to me, this is like, okay, like this would probably be a normal thing that you would do since you're trying to keep survivors alive. Like, you're going to go and get antibiotics, you're going to go and get stuff. The resistance from the main person, Miguel, who's in charge of this whole like show here, is weird to me.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's going to be risky, but these are the things you probably have to do in order to keep people alive. And I just don't feel like he would be quite as sort of mustache twirling as he is in this.
I don't think he's... I would argue that he doesn't come across evil enough. Certainly not compared with the original. Is the other guy's name Miguel in the original? It's been so long since we reviewed it.
I honestly don't remember. But no, he doesn't come across as evil, but he does come across as like not making the smartest tactical decisions for keeping a big group of people alive. So
yeah, his entire motivation is I'm in
charge.
I'm in charge. It's my say. You don't get to backtalk me.
That's his big
and
motivation.
so
Yeah.
you don't have any of that, like, this is a scientific mission, drama that we have, or the tension that we have from the original. Like, Dr. Frankenstein was in charge of that base. There was a power struggle between the military and the scientists, and here it's just like there's no power struggle. It's just this one lieutenant, which is a junior officer. We should also point, I don't know if that's like something they wrote in on purpose. They made him a lieutenant, so he doesn't really have any huge amount of legitimate authority, and most of his soldiers look like they were just pulled off of the streets with their long hair and their beards.
So it has been 5 years, so
Yeah, I mean, Baca could have grown out his flowing locks in that time, I guess. But also, Miguel's uniform is just a travesty. His rank is in the wrong place. There's like nothing right about Miguel's or any of their uniforms, really. They're all wearing like old BDUs that have been not in circulation for at least 10 years. Just a little note there. But yeah, so far, this whole base, other than the fact that it's a base and the fact that there's a military component and that he's kind of a jerk, the guy in charge, there's very little here to draw connections or parallels with the original film.
Right. And all the good things about the original film are taken away. So all of that tension, it's kind of like, okay, what are we watching here? And, with horror films, you always have characters that make stupid decisions. But I would say that just almost every single decision that all these characters make, just that lead to, the overrunning of the base. And even that tension, like the whole base was keeping, in the original, was keeping zombies to basically experiment upon. That's not the case here. They're just kind of keeping them out. There's none of that moral questioning going on in this at all. I mean, it's just totally crazy. And even when they go out to forage for things that their community needs, the decisions that they're making, specifically that Zoe is making, are completely stupid. Like, they go and get the vaccines from, like, what would appear to be her original lab/hospital. Would it have been a big deal for her to say, hey, I might be able to find a cure or whatever. Can I go to my old lab and somebody cover me? Like, and she is responsible for the death of Frank, who went with them. And it just seemed totally contrived and useless. And I don't mind a little bit of that going on, because that's just sort of part of the whole idea. But the idea that Max, who now has got her scent again, literally, like he's smelling like some weird hair thing, I think, that fell off of her, and manages to like sneak into the base, like holding on to the undercarriage of their Hummer. Like, the fact that people in this base are not going to notice or hear him. He's making a lot of freaking noise, slithering around those air ducts and things like that. Like, I feel like they are going to be so much. This is supposed to be 5 years later. They've been dealing with this problem for so long. It's so implausible, and it just is a very hard thing to get into and to like, and watch these things unfold. It just seems silly and ridiculous.
While we're still back in town at the medical hospital, the medical university or whatever it is.
Yep.
One other homage that is like probably one of the only direct ties to the original is all the newspaper in the street, like a ridiculous amount of newspaper floating around in the streets, which definitely I remember from the opening scenes of Day of the Dead. But that's about it. And I 100% agree with you on everything, all of her decisions going in there. There's also another scene on their way out to get the supplies where they break down, and it seems completely useless except for one exchange where one of the soldiers says, I don't think we should risk 8 of our lives for one, and it's like this moral decision. But otherwise it's like a 5 or 10 minute scene where they don't see any zombies and they just have one conversation, and then they get back on the road again. And I'm like, well, you 100% could have edited that out. It's not necessarily going to make the film better, but it wouldn't have made it worse. So
well, right. And then, so if you are having these scenes and if you are having these stops, like, you want it to move along the plot or have some bearing and weight on the plot, and it doesn't really, other than, for me, it's just like kind of pushing the, like, suspension of disbelief that these people that have managed to survive for this long are so clumsy and whatever. And, you know, just to see the useless deaths and how they happen. Like, again, I can tolerate an enormous amount of, like, cheese and whatever in these kinds of films, because that is some of the fun. But there has to be a certain level that you, not reality, but there has to be a certain level that you're willing, a standard that you're willing to meet to make it interesting. And this just seems kind of hopeless. You don't really like these characters at all. I don't like them anyway.
I mean, Baca's a stand-up guy, and
he's all right.
Zoe's okay, other than terrible decisions. She is at least trying to find a cure, and she's super focused on that, even when everybody's telling her not to do it or that she can't do it. And then she's literally working with / on the guy who tried to rape her and is clearly a psycho killer / super fast, super strong zombie. Super smart, like able to steal keys and I don't know. So yeah, as soon as he gets on base, he starts killing people. Like the soldier outside, then they close the doors. I'm like, what happened to the soldier? Isn't he a zombie now? We never see him again.
Yeah, I know.
He kills the maintenance guy. That one, he at least, I think, destroys his entire head. So we're like, that's why he doesn't change.
Right, but the wife we don't see for a while, and that's weird.
No, she doesn't come back till the very end. There's also a pretty funny scene around this time chronologically in the film where we're back in the base, and the radio guy is just like, this is High Rock shelter. If anybody's on this net, call out or whatever. He waits for 1 second, then he starts his message again. He looks super depressed and sad, and then we pan out and we see that he's actually sitting 4 feet away from Lieutenant Miguel. And that might be why Miguel is so angry all the time, is because he has to listen to this guy just repeating those words while he's all sad looking all day long.
Yeah, it could be.
He's sitting like 4 feet away from his desk.
I know.
Oh, it's I'm like, well, first of all, nobody should have that job.
No.
The sad radio man job. And second of all, he should really wait longer to see if anybody's going to respond before he gets back on the radio.
Yep.
Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, there are a few moments like that. I don't know. I definitely would not call this an homage. I think that they pulled out a couple of specific things, and maybe they did it to get maybe it started out that way. Who knows what shape this was in before they actually edited it. Keep in mind that this is what they, I guess, recut or whatever when they delayed the release date. So what could it possibly have been before that is my question. Yeah. I guess my only hope lies with Tina Romero, and maybe we'll see some good stuff out of there. But I just think that this was, if you're going to make a big deal calling this a remake, you should be really sure that you've got your ducks lined up in a row and that you understand what the original is about. I don't think that you need to go with the entire plot, but there does need to be something deeper than what we saw here. Other than some person, I guess the biggest lesson here was her overcoming her trauma to come up with a cure for everybody, maybe, and that military guys are jerks when put into power.
Except for Baca, he's okay.
Except for Baca. But I don't know that he was necessarily... I feel like Miguel might have been in the military before this happened. Not totally clear whether his brother was. Like, okay. Maybe he got into this later. Because he said something like, oh, he's always wanted to be like this. So, I don't know about that. So maybe he didn't have the military training that his brother did.
There's just so many... my notes for this film are kind of like every so often, every few minutes, I think I was just writing, there are so many things wrong with this scene.
Yeah.
So it's not even just like Romero stuff they're getting wrong. It's just like basic stuff.
Filmmaking stuff and storytelling stuff, yeah.
Like Miguel seeing that Max has the name Zoe carved into his arm, and then he draws the conclusion that makes them boyfriend and girlfriend. I'm like, dude, what world do you live in where boyfriends carve their girlfriends' names into their arms?
Yeah.
And then he's like, see, Baca? See what she's playing you, man. They're clearly in a relationship. I'm like, dude, you need to go back and check your relationship handbook, because that is not something that anybody does.
That is not a normal part of relationships. So
oh man. That was some good stuff. there's a scene where they find Max is in the base, and he comes after Zoe, and she runs away and hits an alarm. And this was one part where I'm like, cool, they have an alarm inside the base, and Miguel can look at this weird map, and there's a little glowy light, and he's like, I know exactly where that alarm went off. And I'm like, this is good. This shows some thought. But then the next scene is Baca, Alphonse, and Lucy running down a hallway, screaming, go, 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 go. And I'm just like, I feel like one go probably would have covered it. You don't have to all run down the hallway screaming go.
Well, there's
but
that.
It made it more interesting.
There is that, but there's also once like the alarm is hit, and then they're all called, everybody's like told to come into like the main like area of this base to be safe. And then Miguel sends everybody back, even though they have no idea where this. Well, yeah,
that's
it's
that's
just
the
stupid.
End of, yeah, and their township, they refer to it as the township. It's not defensible. It's just an open space with some trailers and tents. I'm like, if you want everybody to be safe, put them into like another. I mean, even 28 weeks later had this. Everybody got put into a parking garage or something. With only like one or two ways in or out. I mean, it ended up
not being a good idea.
Everybody. It ended up being terrible, but that's because nobody knew that the guy had the key card and was inside. Either way, a different film. There's no defensible scenario here with the township. It's just like an open space, and it goes kind of predictably once the zombies get in there. The zombies getting into the base is all kinds of dumb. You've already kind of gone into this, but it's very frustrating to watch, and it's really frustrating to watch Lily and Zoe run through a crowd of zombies
with no problem
outside the base. While it's not just zombies that are running past them, but people shooting past them to kill those zombies. It's 100% crazy.
Yep.
100%.
It is, as is the odd like predator move that Zoe pulls to finally kill Max. So in a very short amount of time, she goes to like this greenhouse and manages to bury herself and Lily completely under the soil.
Within seconds.
In seconds, like, and there's no sign that either of them, and she's pretty deep in the soil. And, pops out predator-like and destroys Max finally.
At this point in the story, I was also starting to question. They're like, so Max is not a zombie, he's not a human, but he's been shot at least 5 times.
Yeah.
So that makes him more zombie than human.
Right.
So I'm a little bit like, it's not just his antibodies or whatever they're calling his blood.
Else.
There's something else going on here. But then she eviscerates him, and he's still talking. I'm just like, oh man. Thankfully, then she cuts off his head, and a really fake disembodied head shows up on the screen.
That's true. Also, I should note that she's covered in soil like perfectly. Like I don't know how they managed that, but it did look pretty good. But in a non-realistic way, like she would not have looked like this. It's just like a perfect dusting of soil everywhere on her. So that was kind of funny.
It was good. We also are treated to scenes back in the motor pool where Miguel and Baca have like shot at all the zombies. Baca's been eaten or bitten like 4 times.
Yep.
Miguel's had a very throwback death to the original film where he's being eaten guts first.
Yep.
And like looking down. And after like kind of like everything is chill in the motor pool, there's a few people lying on the floor. And it's one of these scenes where I'm like, I love it when I see actors breathing when they're...
Yeah, I know.
And I don't even think of that as like a bad thing. I try to put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, how long can you hold your breath? How long were they shooting? And this could so easily have been, I could have been doing this. And so I only feel sympathy for it. I'm like, oh, that's just rough.
Yeah, but I kind of liked that part. And then, of course, we have our happy ending because Zoe comes back triumphantly with Lily to the compound, and Baca is going to kill himself, and she's like, "No, I can find the cure," and she does, and it ends on immediately because that was like because that's something you can do really quickly.
she's able to find a cure and like produce a vaccine. Well, no, she just pumps dude's blood into Baka's veins. Really,
Yep.
that's
the vaccine.
her vaccine for him, and then the rest of it she uses to make a vaccine using microscope cartoon blood cells again.
And a very hopeful scene at the end with the kids all playing and her broadcasting to everybody that it's a
right,
hopeful thing now. Yeah.
It's really surprising to me that many people are still alive, because the last thing I feel like we see in the township, where it's just Alphonse and Lucy, the only two soldiers who are there, and Lucy gets killed, and Alphonse, I guess, doesn't die, but you never see him again.
Right.
But the last thing we kind of see is that the township is overrun, and lots of people are being killed, and I assume turned into zombies. And so it's surprising to me that there's anybody left.
Yeah.
But it's just all the children are there, and then there's a couple of other adults in the background. So it's like the township actually, or the base has come out surprisingly well, considering how badly things were going.
Right. So, there it is. Day of the Dead, Bloodline.
It's our happy ending. Yeah.
Why
is it called Bloodline?
I think probably because of the whatever's going on with Max's blood, I guess. But in any case, I mean, I think that if you're into watching a really bad zombie film and feel like shouting at the screen, this is a film for you. But I don't think that if you go into this with any expectation that it's going to be a remake of the original, like that is definitely not what this is. So yeah. But it's still, I think it's similar. Like I had similar notes to what yours were, and I'm glad that we actually got to watch it and review it, but I don't know that I could recommend this to anybody other than the really diehard people out there.
No, I mean, Rotten Tomatoes is a 20% score for the audience, and it's a 0 on the tomatometer, but that's because they haven't had enough people actually review it. But right now I think it's averaging 2.2 out of 10.
Yeah, it's not good.
IMDb is also, I think, 3.4 out of 10. So a little more. That's I think like more of a Metacritic. That's like not Metacritic. That's more like just Joe guy who watched it. Popularity is on the rise, however.
Yes.
And you can watch this on Amazon Prime Video for $6.99, which I think is maybe a little too much for this.
That's
film.
too much for this. For a rental for this film, definitely maybe $3 would have been a better price point. But hey, we spent it. So
they might make another film because of our purchases.
Could be. Maybe they can put it towards writing and editing. So that about wraps up our show for today. Well, thanks everybody for listening in and listening to our multiple news items today, as well as our review of Day of the Dead, Bloodline. Next time, we're going to be talking about a film that came out in 2016 called Pandemic, and we hope you'll come back and join us then. In the meantime, if you have comments or really liked Day of the Dead Bloodline and or hated it and would like to share that with us, feel free to leave a comment on the website, which is reanimatedpodcast.com. Correct?
Oh my God!
I know.
160 episodes. 160 episodes.
I know. Is it?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. If you'd like to leave a comment on our website, feel free to go to reanimatedpodcast.com or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast, or you can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Until then, ciao.
Thanks for listening, everybody. See you later.